The Orange Bowl Parade, Miami's gift to the nation, wholesome entertainment. But in San Francisco, when they take to the streets, it's a parade of homosexuals, men hugging other men, cavorting with little boys.
Groomers. Tangent. Well, the groomer libel, you voted for this, is essentially a conspiracy theory / moral panic that claims that there is a widespread LGBTQ agenda to recruit and sexualize children. This is not a new idea. It's not an original idea. It's not bold. It's not innovative. But it sure did attract a lot of attention in the year of our Lord 2022. And that's why we're here at the end of our year talking about this miserable nonsense. I can't stand it. The first thing we have to understand about groomer libel is that this is not really the language of men of reason. You know what I'm saying? This is kind of my breaking point. I don't really believe in reason anymore. I've seen too much. The groomer libel takes pre-existing QAnon rhetoric, the idea of a conspiracy of pedophiles, the idea that the point of far-right agitation is to, quote, save the children, and it weaponizes all of this specifically against LGBT people. It's a slippery slope argument, which claims that there's a continuum of homosexual machinations with overt goals. Let us get married. That's all we want. Ooh, we're just innocent gays. And then the demands begin. You give an inch, they take a mile. Bake our cake, use our pronouns, allow minors to dance for us in drag. And finally, at the demonic bottom of this hell spiral, let teachers choose your kid's gender. Grooming, that's what they call grooming. Let it be said at the outset that the entire conspiracy hinges on a fundamental equivocation between grooming, that is the manipulation of a minor by an adult for the purpose of sexually abusing the minor, an equivocation of grooming with the much more vague concepts of indoctrinating, recruiting. In fact, the groomer libel is extremely vague. There's at least 5 different claims that I've noticed people making under this heading of groomers. Claim number 1 is that drag shows or drag brunches or drag story hours are grooming events designed to recruit children into the LGBTQIA plus mafia. How dare they? How very dare. Let's bring up some examples. I attended another all ages drag brunch in Plano, Texas over the weekend, and the footage I have is shocking. My pussy good, pussy sweet. Pussy good enough to eat. Fuck me all night. It gets worse. More footage to come. We will stop this. Need a bucket and a mop for that wet ass P word. What are we gonna do with these people? Throw them into the Grand Canyon. Let's bring up some more examples. Libs of TikTok, our favorite Twitter account. This is what a family-friendly drag show looks like. A stripper performs at an all-ages drag show while a kid in the front row attempts to hand the stripper a cash tip. Grooming. A groomer alert. Claim 2 is that sexually provocative clothing or behavior at pride or other homosexual events is sexualizing children, which is to say, exposing their innocent, precious eyes to some insinuation of adult sexuality.
It's a parade of homosexuals, men hugging other men, cavorting with little boys.
I don't like being gaslit about how totally not weird this is. It's not gonna lick itself. Innuendo. Grooming, it's all implication, isn't it? Like, there's not been a single case, and I've been following this for a year, there's not really been a single case of anyone alleging that a child was abused at a drag show. It's all this kind of vague implication. Ooh, there's this sexually provocative stuff, and it's happening near children. I think we all know what that means. Do we know what that means? I mean, I think that it's probably worth talking about what grooming is. What is grooming actually? How is grooming defined by organizations that are actually concerned about the welfare of children, that are actually concerned about protecting children from sex trafficking, from abuse. An English organization, will forgive the Englishness just this once, the NSPCC, National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, defines grooming as when someone builds a relationship, trust, and emotional connection with a child or young person so they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse them. Children and young people who are groomed can be sexually abused, exploited, or trafficked. Tactics include pretending to be younger, buying gifts, taking them on trips, giving advice or understanding, giving attention. And critically, the goal is sexual abuse. I feel like I have an instinctive understanding for what grooming is because I was once the victim of, in the grand scheme of things, a minor kind of grooming, but one that certainly qualifies it as grooming, I think. When I was 14 years old, I was groomed by men on the internet. I was catfished, basically, into thinking that I was chatting with girls my age, 14. It was only kind of later I kind of realized that I had been talking to adult men on dating sites as a 14-year-old and had been manipulated, coerced, and tricked into sort of providing sexual performance for adult men when I was a teenager. I had gotten no real sex education at that point, apart from essentially sex is when a man inserts tab A into a woman's slot B, and sex is bad before marriage, save yourself for marriage, sex bad. Like, that's it. That's the sex education I had at 14, and they just released me into the wild west of early 2000s internet. This is not a terribly traumatic thing for me. I think that I have a vague sense of distrust that lingers over me maybe as a result of it, but I'm not claiming to be, I think most cases of child sexual abuse are much more severe than anything I've been through. So I'm not trying to claim to speak for victims or anything like that. I'm just saying that, I don't know, that to me is what grooming is, right? It's manipulating a child for the purpose of sexual abuse. That's something that I went through when I was 14. It's a horrible thing that I don't want anyone else to go through. Is that what's happening at these drag events? Let it be said, first of all, that most drag performances that involve children, the drag queen story hours and so on, don't even have any kind of sexually explicit content at all. A lot of conservatives who promote the groomer libel do seem to believe that drag is inherently sexual, that cross-dressing is inherently sexual, that it's a sexual display, and that by engaging in it in the presence of children, you're sort of inherently exposing children to sexuality in a way that's traumatizing and manipulative. This is false, and it's, as a trans person, it's very disturbing, right? Because the people who push the groomer libel do not paint gender nonconformity with a fine brush. They do not distinguish between drag queens, cross-dressers, and trans people. So they see cis straight people as representing a kind of non-sexual normality. So the common response from progressives to the groomer accusations is to kind of do hypocrisy dunks. You can point to professional wrestling, to Hooters, to beaches, to weird conservative stunts that involve sexy women, cheerleaders. All of these things involving adult heterosexuality, no one seems to have any problem with around children, right? But any form of gender deviance is defined by proponents of the groomer libel as sexual performance. And so as a trans person, this is very scary because it means that if this lie about us kind of reaches a wide enough audience, we will be exiled from public life. That's kind of the long-term goal of this. Tangent. Let us finish listing out the fundamental claims of the groomer libel. Claim 3. Teachers are grooming, that is, recruiting your children into homosexuality, or worse, gender transition.
The Communist Party USA, their goals are happening. People are stealing the innocence of children. My innocence was never stolen. That's why I am the way I am.
This wicked book, me and Earl and the dying girl, sexually indoctrinated with wicked, vile books. And she believes in traditional marriage between a man and a woman. And in that book, it talked about two moms.
Teachers, many times, who may have used these same books to groom students that have maybe molested students.
They're promoting Pornhub. This is being promoted in schools. I understand the real agenda behind this push, and it's a sexual rights agenda for children that's coming down the pipeline via government schools. And the real agenda is to lower the age of consent and promote pedophilia.
When the light of the Bible is removed, what is left is darkness and evil.
Pornography can be very addictive. Would we leave heroin needles sitting out in schools?
Never mind the middle schoolers. How many adults have mastered critical thinking skills while they're horny? If it is true, according to reader response theory, that readers experience...
Here's an example. A teacher posts to Twitter, really excited for the House sex ed bill hearing later today. Teaching comprehensive, queer-inclusive, pleasure-based sex ed was a highlight of my time teaching. Quote tweet, libs of TikTok. Okay, groomer. So comprehensive sex ed is grooming. We have a serious groomer teacher problem in this country. At the core of this is a kind of anxiety that parents have that they will lose control of their children's sexuality and their children's beliefs. The commentator Michael Hobbs has dissected moral panics from the satanic panic in the 90s to the political correctness scare that seems to be an ongoing thing on college campuses. And basically, he's said that moral panics often tend to center on moments when parents fear losing control of their children. So as daycare is becoming a more common practice in the 90s, the satanic panic occurs where parents feel, oh, they don't know what's going on with their kids during the day. And so that leaves them with this anxiety where they're sort of prone to having, exaggerated fears stoked by people willing to make things up and to sort of create the illusion that there's a serious systemic problem where none exists.
And I'm a little shocked, I guess is what I would put it. It's called something called furries. If you don't know what furries are, it's where school children dress up as animals, cats or dogs, during the school day. They meow and they bark, and they interact with their school, with the teachers and that in this fashion. And now schools are wanting to put litter boxes in the schools for these children to use. How is this sanitary? I even heard from one person here recently said that a student identified as a cat and wanted a litter box. And the school didn't provide the litter box, so the student went ahead and defecated on the floor. If some kids can't wear American flag to walk through the school on their shirt, and you keep them out of school, and you kick them out of school, but it's okay if they wear a cat costume, and that's fine, and you have a litter box for them, and that's fine.
The same thing is true of the political correctness panic. Parents are afraid their kids are going to go to college and, they're coming back Marxists. They're coming back indoctrinated. They're coming back believing things I didn't teach them and things I don't believe, right? If you think of your children, parental love so often is a kind of extended narcissism, right? Parents view their children as extensions of their own selves. So it's terrifying to parents to lose control, and parents sort of see education about homosexuality or about, trans people, gender variance, sexuality in general, as kind of this very threatening thing. They can't imagine that any child of theirs would be queer for any reason other than external recruitment. Again, this is not a new idea, and we'll talk about the history of this in a moment. Claim 4 is that childhood or adolescent gender transition is being promoted to children by schools, by hospitals, by big pharma, by the medical establishment, with the aim of mutilating children for profit This can be anything as simple as merely acknowledging the existence of trans children. Don Cheadle wore Protect Trans Kids shirt. The Daily Wire's marketing director posts "Okay Groomer." Being trans, they see as inherently sexual. So any acknowledgement of trans children is sexualizing kids, therefore grooming. This is the logic that we are up against, and I recommend not treating it as logic. Claim 5 is simply that LGBT people are pedophiles, or allies of pedophiles. Pedo simps.
The Democrats are the party of pedophiles. The Democrats are the party of princess predators from Disney. The Democrats are the party of teachers, elementary school teachers trying to transition their elementary school age children and convince them they're a different gender.
Again, notice like the equivocation. Pedophilia, transing, very coarse brushes. Subtangent, the history of the Groomer libel.
With television commercials, the Save Our Children group is appealing to parental anxieties, saying gays will flaunt their homosexuality before impressionable children.
The same people who turned San Francisco into a hotbed of homosexuality want to do the same thing to Dade County.
The idea that gay people are pedophiles or pedo enablers is an age-old libel that goes back to the very beginning of organized opposition to gay rights. In 1977, just 8 years after the Stonewall riots, Anita Bryant became the voice of opposition to gay rights.
I have been blacklisted for exercising the right of a mother to defend her children and all children against their being recruited by homosexuals.
Bryant drew attention with statements like, quote, "Gays can't reproduce, they have to recruit."
This is the core idea behind the Groomer libel. It's just Anita Bryant's idea. It's just reheated 70s homophobia. Bryant headed the Save Our Children coalition to overturn a 1977 Dade County ordinance banning discrimination in housing, employment, and public accommodation on grounds of sexual orientation. This also influenced California's Proposition 6, the Briggs Initiative, which mandated firing openly gay public school teachers and any employees who supported gay rights. So from the beginning of organized backlash to gay rights, gay teachers have been a kind of battleground. Harvey Milk, famously, his slogan was, "I'm Harvey Milk, I'm here to recruit you," playing off of the idea of recruitment, now called grooming. The fundamental idea of the homophobic backlash is that gay people are recruiting, they can't reproduce, so they must recruit. They're doing this especially through publication. Also, gay people are pedophiles. Also, gay rights threaten religious liberty, right? My religious bigotry is being attacked by the homosexuals. It's super fucking hard for me. It's super fucking hard for me. It's super fucking hard for me. These talking points have never really gone away, but I do think they became less prominent, especially after the shift in the 2010s, where a majority of Americans came to support same-sex marriage. But in the last few years, 70s homophobia has returned with a vengeance, and this time it's particularly targeting trans people. Arguably, the entire Groomer conspiracy theory can be traced back to one gender-critical divorced weirdo named Graham Linehan. In December 2019, Graham Linehan tweets "Okay Groomer" multiple times, a modification of a meme, "Okay Boomer," that was popular at the time.
Whatever you say, Boomer.
I cannot find an example of someone using the phrase "Okay Groomer" until Graham Linehan used it in 2019. So I think this little weasel may have started the whole goddamn thing. On March 8, 2020, a 4chan post encouraged Twitter users to comment "Okay Groomer" under every post regarding, quote, LGBTQ sexualization of children, with the goal of making LGBTQ people finally come out as pro-child molesting. This is sort of moderately clever in that usual 4chan way. You claim to be a Save Our Children warrior, fighting the groomers. If anyone suggests that you're sort of turning groomer into a homophobic slur, you can fall back on, oh, so you think that it's inherently homosexual to be a child molester. It's interesting that you think that. Perhaps it is you that is the homophobe. Or you can simply say, you sure are getting emotional about this groomer thing. I guess grooming children is really important to you, huh? These little weasels, these little bastards, they're clever in their small-brained way. You know, these things don't catch on for no reason. They catch on because they work. They're like Jedi mind tricks. They manipulate the simple-minded, which unfortunately is a lot of people. It makes me want to drink sangria out of my Hadestown coffee mug. There's pomegranate seeds in the bottom, which represent the shatters of my broken heart. On May 7th, 2020, Graham Linehan accuses UC Berkeley professor Grace Lavery of grooming because she teaches things that parents won't approve of. On June 30th, 2020, Abigail Schreier publishes Irreversible Damage, the Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters. Abigail does not use the phrase groomer, as far as I'm aware, but this book implants the idea in a lot of conservatives' minds that the sort of classic TERF ideas about transmasculine youth being confused little girls who are sort of being promised, transition as a solution to all the problems that come with being a female in this world. This idea sort of gains traction among conservatives after that book is published, and it's going to be kind of incorporated into the whole groomer conspiracy. In January 2021, Jack retweets an OK Groomer post. Things go quiet for a year. And then on February 1, 22nd, author James Lindsay begins posting OK Groomer multiple times. A lot of this history is summed up really well in a thread on Twitter from Alejandra Caraballo, who has done an admirable job of chronicling this miserable history. I hope she's doing okay, but I'm sure her brain is broken, as is mine. Also, in early 2022, a bill is introduced to the Florida State Legislature called the Florida Parental Rights in Education Act, also known as the Don't Say Gay Bill. On March 4th, Ron DeSantis Communications Director Christina tweets that the Don't Say Gay Bill would be more accurately described as an anti-grooming bill. And now the snowball is really rolling down the hill. British gender-critical journalist Janice Turner accuses trans charity Mermaids of pure grooming because of an exit button on their website. Again, the idea is that providing any information to minors that parents wouldn't want them to have for any reason is grooming. So homophobic parents' rights are more important than the rights of minors to access accurate information about sex and gender. That's the claim that's being advanced. And any educator, any charity, any organization that's providing support or information to queer youth are groomers, according to this logic. The equivocation that's taking place is summarized explicitly in a tweet from James Lindsay, retweeted by Ben Shapiro on March 28th, defining grooming as the deliberate act of bringing a child into a sexual, political, or racial ideology, practice, cult, or lifestyle without the knowledge or consent of his or her parents for the aim of isolating them from their family so the external party can abuse and manipulate them. So this is a definition of grooming that's completely detached from any child welfare organization's definition. Obviously, it's a definition that kind of specifically speaks to the fears of conservative parents who feel that their children learning about the existence of racism or the existence of gay people are being indoctrinated, manipulated, recruited, which is to say, and I'm really exhausting my fingers with these air quotes here, groomed. They're defining grooming as indoctrination without parents' permission. Indoctrination is a very vague concept. What is it different? I mean, there's obviously a kind of relativity to the idea of indoctrination, right? One person's indoctrination is another person's education. I think that teaching children about hell is indoctrination. You're trying to scare them into believing in your religion. Conservatives think that teaching children that being gay is okay is indoctrination because they think that they think they can extinguish the existence of queer people by simply denying their existence. If they can just keep kids from finding out about us, then they'll stop it. This is false. I was given no indication that trans people exist at any point in my education, and yet here I am. But I'm really wasting my time trying to use logic. On March 28th, 2022, Ron DeSantis signs the Florida Parental Rights in Education Act, prompting many Disney employees to walk out in protest of Disney's initial silence and then lukewarm condemnation of the Don't Say Gay bill. In April 2022, an anti-groomer protest at Disneyland takes place.
Boycott Disney! Boycott Disney! Our children! Save our children!
And on April 8th, Media Matters finds that Fox News has aired 170 segments targeting trans people over a 3-week period. All of this kind of sets the stage for what's going to happen in the summer of 2022, where things get really grim. I was only vaguely paying attention to most of this because I was working on a video called The Hunger, which I published on May 30th, 2022, and then spent a lot of time on social media at the beginning of Pride Month. And I really got hit with the brunt of this groomer rhetoric. It was kind of a shock to me to return to social media after a break and find I'm being accused of pedophilia 10 to 20 times a day. It seemed like every day I'm reading a story about the Proud Boys disrupting drag queen story hours or protesting at Pride events. At first I tried tweeting to reason with these people, but quickly realized I'm wasting my time and resorted to irony to do a little trolling. It's time to go on the offensive. I won't rest until every American child has been transed. And the response to this tweet, well, deny them the excuse of making a joke. Once they start to backpedal, always expect this to be a real wish of theirs. I'm serious. So the far right, which has long been using the excuse that they're just joking or just memeing, I can't believe you're taking us seriously, you libs who don't understand comedy. They will not tolerate 1 second of progressive irony on this topic. And immediately I'm inundated with hundreds of people who are honest to God, convinced that I am personally plotting and capable of transing every American child. I've got Pepes loading shotguns looking at me. They weren't supposed to become this insane this quickly. The genocide of Christianity was supposed to be a slow boil, but the invention of the internet accelerated bio-Leninism before the demographic tide turned fully in their favor. The internet saved humanity. These people reproduce by grooming children. When you try to restrict their access to children, they scream out in agony. To them, it's akin to genocide. They don't reproduce. They recruit. 2022 sort of culminated for me in this absolutely psychedelic headline from the Idaho Tribune. Neo-Nazis, White Lives Matter, Patriot Front, Satanists, Antifa, and drag queens turn Coeur d'Alene into anti-Christian freak show. They're all anti-Christian. A local Pride in the Park event in North Idaho became a national spectacle as neo-pagan extremist groups such as Patriot Front and White Lives Matter clashed with Satanists and drag queens in North Idaho this Saturday, June 11th. While these warring groups couldn't be any more different from one another, the three unifying factors threading them together is they were all from out of state, they're all universally despised by normal people, and they're all anti-Christian. The day began with Satanists co-mingling with children in a park in Coeur d'Alene, before being invited to dance on stage with drag queens, men dressed as women, for those not in the know, who were official performers for the event. The event continued while off in the distance, a large group of neo-pagan reactionaries calling themselves Patriot Front were rounded up by the police and charged with conspiracy to riot. Over to the left was the White Lives Matter group arguing with strangers about human biology and handing out pamphlets. And finally, in the right corner, we had Antifa members who traveled from Portland, Oregon to find themselves locked up among the neo-Nazis and pagans. All of these groups are outsiders, all of these groups are anti-Christian, and all of these groups together turned our beautiful home into a national freak show. These Satanists, drag queens, neo-pagans, Antifa, white supremacists, all of them are weird. They're not normal. They don't look normal. They don't talk normal. They don't act normal. They're not normal. If North Idaho is going to come together, it will be under the banner of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Anything else isn't enough and will not work. You know who didn't cause a scene? Those who went to the park to pray. Take notes, Idaho, by Jonathan Meadows, an author, a Christian, and a loving husband and father. I can't do this anymore. I quit. I can't de-radicalize these. You can't de-radicalize this. Throughout 22, Tucker Carlson has become the voice of the Groomer libel, constantly implying that teachers, that hospitals, that gay hypnosis and cash awaits those with absurd genders. The most viewed cable news host in the country is broadcasting this nonsense every night. And what are the effects of this? Well, in short, widespread violence and calls for violence, both extrajudicial and state violence. Of course, you're always going to have your fire and brimstone preachers casually suggesting that they kill us all.
Death! These people should be put to death. Every single homosexual in our country should be charged with the crime, the abomination of homosexuality that they have. They should be convicted in a lawful trial. They should be sentenced with death. They should be lined up against the wall and shot in the back of the head. That's what God teaches.
But now you've got donut shops being firebombed for hosting drag shows, masked brown shirts showing up at pride events, Mississippi Republicans condemning those who try to find political compromise with those who want to groom our school-aged children and pretend men are women, etc. I think they need to be lined up against wall before a firing squad to be sent to an early judgment. Ben Shapiro threatening to pick up a gun.
Beto O'Rourke does not get to raise my child. And if he tries, I will meet him at the door with a gun.
Armed militias showing up at drag shows. Tulsi Gabbard calling for the imprisonment of woke doctors. And of course a mass shooting at Club Q in Colorado Springs, killing 5 people and provoking extremely deranged apologia among conservative thinkers. We shouldn't tolerate pedophiles grooming kids. Club Q had a grooming event. How do prevent the violence and stop the grooming? The grooming of children is not stopping. People are calling for more violence. I do not think legislators will stop the grooming. People will not stop calling for violence. So you tell me what happens next. 2022 saw a new wave of bills criminalizing gender-affirming care for minors. In August 2022, libs of TikTok falsely claimed that the Boston Children's Hospital was providing gender-affirming hysterectomies to minors, leading to bomb threats. So we've had wave after wave of anti-LGBT violence and the threats of legislative violence. And on top of that, there's the psychological impact of this on queer people. Some cis gay people have attempted to cling to what social normality they have and turn against trans people, gays against groomers.
And unfortunately, the tragedy that happened in Colorado Springs the other night, it was expected and predictable. We all, within Gays Against Groomers, saw this coming from a mile away. Yeah. And sadly, I don't think it's going to stop until we end this evil agenda that is attacking children.
Is this woman even really gay? I don't know. This is just a tangent. I don't have to check facts. No one else seems to be checking facts, so why should I? My experience of the effect of all this on trans people is that it's been devastating. For years, I've talked to trans people and heard so many say that they avoid children. They avoid even being seen in the same room as a child out of fear of this stigma about pedophilia. Trans people don't want to be seen with children. I don't want to be seen with children. Kill your shitty child. Some queer people have posted about their experiences being publicly confronted with groomer talking points and pedophile accusations. I also think all of this has just kind of destroyed the possibility of reason about certain topics. Is it possible now to have a conversation about what is appropriate for children at a drag show, for example? I feel like this is impossible to discuss because the air is so poisoned by this groomer nonsense that it's impossible for anyone to think clearly. It also really derails legitimate discussions about child sex trafficking and sexual abuse when you misuse these words like groomer so thoroughly that no one even knows what they mean anymore. And it erases the complexity of discussions about children and sexuality. I've seen a lot of well-meaning progressive people try to combat the groomer talking points by saying that, children at drag shows couldn't possibly be influenced by these things because children have no sexuality. Children just have no sexual thoughts. This is just not true. Psychologists have had to fight for hundreds of years at this point to establish the fact that children do have sexual feelings. I had sexual feelings when I was a child. Adults didn't tell me what I was feeling, but I knew something was up with whatever Jasmine is doing to Jafar. Why is this giant phallic slug enslaving Princess Leia in a bikini in a PG movie for all ages? I don't know, guys. A lot of people want to know how to combat this rhetoric, and I wish I had a good answer. The number one thing I see people doing, and what I've often resorted to doing, are kind of hypocrisy gotchas, where you say, so you think it's inappropriate for a drag queen to lift her skirt, but what about Hooters waitresses? What about women in bikinis on beaches? What about worldwide? What about professional wrestling? Aren't these kind of kinky outfits? Why are children allowed to see this? Why are children allowed at the beach? I don't know. I feel like this is having a chilling effect on the culture. It's sort of sexual conservatism is increasing in all corners in response to these talking points, as kind of paranoia about grooming sets in, even in progressive spaces, and we kind of shut up sexuality and shut up any discussion of sexuality as we insist that being gay is more about emotions than it is about sexuality. And we insist against all experience and science that teenagers don't have sexual feelings. I don't know. I just feel like reason has lost. And it's important to remember that conservatives are not going to be convinced by your hypocrisy dunks, right? You think it's okay to go to Hooters with your child, but not to a drag show? Hypocrisy exposed. Well, look, that's not a contradiction. It's not hypocrisy to people who believe that homosexuality is fundamentally different. Fundamentally, it's perversion, it's unnatural, it's immoral. So of course they're going to judge things more harshly when it's done by queer people than when it's done by straight people. They don't care about children being indoctrinated into the straight lifestyle. They don't accept that as a possibility because they assume that being straight, that being cis is the natural way of things, the natural order, which is being corrupted by these activists, right? So to them, it's not hypocrisy. And pointing these things out that, oh, no one seems to have a problem with overt displays of heterosexuality, that doesn't feel like an own to them. They don't feel like you've made a point because they don't think that gay people and straight people are equal. So all of this groomer stuff, trying to respond to it as if it's a good faith claim of concern for children, rather than what it is, which is an assertion of bigotry and hatred and distrust and exile of queerness. It's just so misguided and it's never going to work, right? So I don't really have the answer here. I feel kind of hopeless, to be honest. I know that's not the tone that people want me to end this on. I'm supposed to like de-radicalize the alt-right or whatever, but I don't know. The more I look at this kind of issue, the more I think that reason is futile, and this is not a conversation, it's a war. And I have a hard time seeing people who push these obvious lies as interlocutors. I see them as enemy combatants. I guess it's kind of sad that's how I think now, but it's how I've been led to think by the last year. And the way that the discourse has gone, I just don't feel like I have answers the way I used to. I guess we could just troll people. Haha, we're gonna make your kids gay.
Security agent. No, let him stay.
No.
Let him stay.
Well, at least it's a fruit pie.